All right, guys. So as the battle over critical race theory being taught in schools wages on, the tactics from the left are just getting to the point where they're just downright desperate. Okay, they're just downright desperate, right? Because it's very obvious to anybody paying attention that the Democrat Party and the teachers unions are in the same bed, and that they have a far left agenda when it comes to education, and parents are pushing back against that, and it really pisses them off because the teachers unions believe that they run this country, right? They believe that they control education and what should be taught, and if parents have anything to say about it, then they need to shut up because they're too dumb to understand it, right? That's essentially what they're saying. This was plain obvious to me when the teachers unions were the ones that were basically holding up the process of schools opening back up in the first place, right? When everybody was like, school should be open, and the Democrats dragged ass on opening up the schools because the teachers unions was like, no. And because they're one of the largest donors to the Democrat Party, they essentially control the Democrat Party. They're in bed together, right? And the president of the American Federation of Teachers, which is one of the largest teachers unions in the country, Miss Randi Weingarten, she comes out and says, well, we're not teaching critical race theory in schools, but at the same time, the GOP is trying to keep us from teaching quote unquote accurate racialized history while also embracing Ibram X. Kennedy and his anti-racist ideology, which again is just an offshoot of critical race theory. That's all it is. Take a look.
Critical race theory is not taught in elementary schools or middle schools or high schools. It's a method of examination taught in law school and in college that helps analyze whether systemic racism exists, and in particular, whether it has an effect on law and public policy. But cultural warriors are labeling any discussion of race, racism, or discrimination as CRT to try to make it toxic. They are bullying teachers and trying to stop us from teaching students accurate history. We have to build, as Dr. Kendi says all the time, an anti-racist society. It's so important. And education, has a vital role to play in this. We're committed to helping educators understand how to engage with diverse student populations, to focus on promoting racial literacy, to enable educators to advocate for racial inclusivity, to change collective practices and policies that impact education outcomes in public schools. That's our work, and we're always learning how to do better, but we have our work cut out for us because there are legislators, mostly from the Republican Party, who are currently bullying teachers and trying to stop us from teaching kids honest history and helping them to think critically about it. Look, maybe they're just trying to raise the temperature on race relations because of the next election, but whatever it is, it's not good right now. They're not giving us a chance to engage with our kids in a way that we know we need to, and we know that kids need.
All right, guys. So this is the type of mental gymnastics that really just, it pisses me off. Because you keep saying that it's not being taught in schools. Okay, so if it's not being taught in schools, what is the issue, right? If the Republicans say, we're going to ban critical race theory, and you're saying it's not being taught in schools, what is the problem, right? And see, what really exposes them, right, for how fake they actually are, is that one, well, we already know for a fact that another teachers union, the NEA, they've basically been outright like, no, we're just going to push back. We want to implement critical race theory, right? We're going to have our administrators, our teachers, people that are part of our unions. They're going to trickle down this ideology into schools. They can't even dispute that anymore, right? You also have teachers that have come out, I think 5,000 so teachers that come out and say, no, we are going to teach critical race theory regardless of the GOP laws, right? We're literally going to break the law, okay? But again, they go out and they make claims that it's not being taught in school. It's not a big deal. Obviously, something's a big deal here, right? Obviously, there's something that has you triggered, okay? Because they also keep throwing in this line about, well, they're trying to keep us from teaching accurate history. Okay, so is the history that you're teaching right now not accurate? Right? What more do you want to teach than the history that's already been taught? I don't understand. Because the history that's been taught right now includes slavery. It includes Jim Crow. It includes the Civil Rights era. It includes all the things that involve race in our history. So what more do you want to teach? Obviously, there's something more that you're fighting to teach than what you're already teaching. See, again, this is what exposes them. If critical race theory is truly not being taught in schools, you know what you should do, right? If I'm the teachers union, I'd be like, it's not being taught in schools, it doesn't matter. Next question. What are we doing here? But again, that's not what they're doing. So, that excuse hasn't been working because parents are still going to school boards and it's still expressing their views. And this is something that's happened across all races, right? We've seen black people, we've seen white people, we've seen Asian people, we've seen Hispanic, we've seen parents all across the board that don't like this. They don't want this. And I find it interesting how she accuses the GOP of trying to stir up race relations or racial tensions in the country using critical race theory when it's not the GOP doing this. This is the parents. The parents are the ones doing this. The parents are doing this because they don't want racial tension in this country. They don't want kids to see each other in a racialized lens. That's why parents are doing it. They're doing it for the exact opposite reason, right? To avoid racial tension. So what are you talking about? And because the liberal establishment has failed to convince them that it's not being taught in schools, they've now resulted to basically insulting and belittling parents and basically calling them dumb and saying that they don't understand critical race theory, which is basically what CNN has resulted to doing. Take a look.
Republican politicians have been framing this theory as a threat to American children, and legislators in more than 12 states have proposed bills to ban it. Weingarten says her union is prepared to stand up for any member who is punished for teaching lessons on race and racism. CNN's Ellie Reeves spoke with a teacher who uses critical race theory and looked at how backlash to this framework has exploded. So, Ellie, do these vocal opponents of critical race theory actually understand fully what it is?
No. And why should they? It's an academic theory mostly taught at the grad student level. But what they think it means is teaching white kids that all white people are bad and racist. And so, of course, they're afraid of that.
Can it influence the way that some teachers teach? Yeah, but that's a good thing, right? Because race and racism is literally the building blocks of this country. So how can you not talk about it?
Critical race theory is an academic framework that says racial inequality is perpetuated by the racism embedded in America's laws, not by individual bigotry. But relentless propaganda from some conservatives has created a panic that white people, and especially white children, are under attack. Anti-CRT propaganda is drawing big crowds.
Of course I'm against critical race theory.
More than 100 people showed up at this diner near Baltimore, where local Republican groups held a panel on school COVID shutdowns and CRT.
What is critical race theory?
Critical race theory is the idea that's taught to our nation's youth that the way that you're born contributes to the amount of success that you can achieve in this country. It basically states that white people are born with everything, and if you're not white, you're born with nothing.
Can you name any critical race theory scholars?
Probably not.
Can you name any critical race theory concepts?
I don't know what the concepts are. I think I summarized critical race theory as a whole pretty well.
To paint the country as a inherently racist country from its founding, I think is dangerous.
The Three-Fifths Compromise is written into the Constitution, in which slaves are counted as 3/5 of a person.
Of course, and that was applied at an earlier time. That is not the case now, obviously.
Well, you just mentioned the founding of the country, so.
Well, yeah, it wasn't perfectly written in the Constitution.
When did you first hear about critical race theory?
Sometime around last year.
Where'd you see it?
I'm on Fox News. The idea that you can succeed based on your race is ludicrous. This is not the 1960s anymore. Just because of your skin color does not mean that you cannot be successful here in America. Point blank, period.
All right, guys. So first of all, I want to address the 3/5 compromise, because a lot of people always want to bring up 3/5 compromise as an example of the founding of this country being inherently racist. Listen, everybody knows that the founding of this country included slaves, right? Everybody knows that slaves were involved in that, right? That we had states that had slavery. Now, during that time, during the founding of the country, when they were trying to figure out how to delegate power among the states and voting representation, the southern states was like, hey, we should count all of our slave population as one person. Why? Because it would give them more power. The North was like, nah, you should not do that. We shouldn't do that because these people, they don't even have the right to vote. They don't even have property rights. They don't have rights. So why should they count towards your population, right? Why should you get more power because of that? So essentially, the North was arguing for a solution that would give slave-holding states less power. That's what they was arguing for. It was more about power than it was about them seeing black people as less than human or less than one person or whatever. Because again, these slave-holding states wanted to count slaves as full people, right? They wanted them to count towards their population. These states that had slaves, right? And in order for them to actually come to an agreement, that's how the 3/5 compromise came about, where it was like, okay, we'll treat slaves as 3/5 of people. But see, the way the liberal academics want to frame it is, they want to frame it as, well, it's there so they get more power. No, the North thought that it's better off to preserve the Union and us to stay together rather than go back and forth about how much slaves should count towards the populations. Now, I do believe that free blacks were counted, right, as a whole person, okay, for population and census purposes, okay, and when it comes to representation. So they never actually tell the full story of why the 3/5 compromise existed, right? So anyways, in this CNN segment here, they try to play this semantics game where they try to pretend like Republicans and concerned parents are the idiots and the dummies, and everybody that agrees with this narrative that America is a racist country, right? Our laws are racist. The Americans' founding is racist. Okay, everything about our country, the roots of our country is racist. They try to pretend like those people are right. Look at how in the interview, how they interviewed that first woman who basically said that, but at the same time, what she's saying when she says that is basically the same thing that concerned parents and Republican college students, they're saying the same thing. Effectively the same thing. What the only difference is that they're saying that, hey, we don't agree with this idea of teaching kids that this country is racist, is that our country is built off of racism. We don't agree with that. But because they don't agree with that, they're painted as dumb. And they say, well, you don't understand critical race theory. But at the same time, you don't say that the person that says that this country is built off racism, and because they agree with that statement, you don't say that they don't understand critical race theory, even though you just said that saying that this country is built off racism is not, or this country is racist, or that certain people have advantages in this country because of their race. You're saying that that's not critical race theory, right? See, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's all about a narrative. They want to push the narrative that this country is systemically racist. And if you disagree with that, then you're dumb, right? That's what's going on here. And you have the liberal media, guys, the liberal media belittling parents now, calling parents dumb, saying that because you don't agree with our ideology, because you don't want your kids to be taught that this country is systemically racist and that there are certain people in society that have advantages because of their skin color, because you don't want your kids to be taught that, then therefore you're an idiot and you're stupid. Because they couldn't convince parents that it wasn't being taught in schools, because parents are smart enough to know, yeah, this actually is being taught in school. This is stuff that they're learning about. To me, it just shows you how much the left is losing on this issue, right? Most people just don't agree with it. They don't like it. They don't want their kids being taught it. And again, the way the liberal media frames that is they say, oh no, they're just stupid. They're just dumb. Again, this is how elitist media works. This is how the Democrat Party works. If you don't agree with me, then you're dumb. you're stupid, right? And then they wonder why they're so out of touch with the American people. It's because of things like this. That's what it is. You can't sit here and tell me that these parents, who are composed of all races, that are coming out here and fighting against us, you can't tell me these people are stupid, right? You can't say that. These parents know exactly what they're fighting against. They know exactly what critical race theory calls for. They know exactly how this ideology, this neo-Marxist ideology, is being funneled into schools. They know how it affects the school system. Okay, they may not necessarily be exactly right on the details, but they know what the end goal is. They know what the end goal is. Everybody knows what the end goal is. So, to me, like I said, guys, it just shows how desperate the media is to push this far left agenda and how they will go out of their way just to smear anybody that doesn't agree with them. So, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.